Committee, Elementary School Building Committee for November 20th to order. The public can access this meeting via WebEx technology. The meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and participation is being provided as a courtesy, the meeting will not be suspended if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. The meeting number tonight is 2344-518-3474. The password is Burlington with a capital B. Chrissy, are you driving? Beautiful. Our first item of business is the approval of the November 13th meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? No. All right. Mrs. Bond? Mrs. Monaco? Aye. Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cuna?
Yes.
Mr. Sagarino?
Abstain.
Mr. Denizio?
Abstain.
Mr. Rosenblatt?
Abstain.
Mr. Villano?
Yes.
Mrs. Priest?
Aye.
Did I get bunker line? No. Okay. All right. I am a I, so let me count. 903. All right. We also have invoices and commitments for approval.
Yes, so this evening we have Dorn Whittier's contract amendment number 2 in the amount of $5,500, and that was for the preferred schematic report cost estimate with PM&C. And then following the amendment, we have our Dorn Whittier invoice number 14 in the amount of $5,500.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
Just very briefly, I understand we pay you for the work you're doing, so what's a contract amendment, and why is that a separate type of cost? Just briefly, real briefly. Thank you.
Yeah, so the estimate for, third-party estimate is outside of our base services. So it's just to cover the estimate with our estimator PM&C, who's our consultant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a motion on the table?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right. Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cuna?
Yes.
Mr. Sagarino?
Yes.
Mr. Denizio?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Villano?
Yes.
Mrs. Priest?
Aye.
And I am a yes. It's 12-0-0.
And then briefly, Mike Cox is joining us remote today. If you just want to go over the budget status reflecting the approval we just went through.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. So, the amendment that we were just approving will be applied to the top line there, OPM feasibility study. As you can see in the far right corner, prior to this approved amendment, we had 17,850 uncommitted. So that will go against that budget line there and lessen by that value. So our overall unexpended, uncommitted costs are still very healthy at this time. You know, approximately 286,000.
Thank you, Mike. And then we just keep on our agenda purposes of just in case there are any previous public comment response, but we do not have any previous public comment response this evening.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have regular public comment. Do you have folks in the room? Come on up.
Good evening. Thank you, Jason Brooks, Precinct 6 resident, Beaverbrook Road, Fox Hill parent. I'm also on the board for Burlington Youth Lacrosse. At the last meeting, it's a little concerning to me that there's discussion of not putting any fields at Fox Hill School at this time. Currently, there's fields there that are used during the school day and after school. During the Conservation Commission's report, there was talk of people could use ATVs to go through there, people walking around through the vernal pools, as they do now, as has been mentioned too. Obviously, there's ways to prevent that. My question is, as a hypothetical, if we don't put those fields in and they're open space, do those areas become off limits at some points to the students in the at Fox Hill? Now, with that, there is also a current lack of fields for Burlington youth sports. I can attest that during lacrosse season, we have to have our practices start at 8 sometimes, simply because there's a lack of fields. We share it with soccer. We share it with field hockey, football during the fall. So with that, I would like, with people making comments that, do we really need fields around here too? One of the things I'd like to ask is that we actually maximize the field space there for the whole town, not just for conservation. I'm sure it can be worked out that we can work with the Conservation Commission to get fields over there to be used for the schools and for the youth athletics. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anybody online? Okay. I'm going to turn it to Donna now. Okay.
Good morning. Good morning. It's been a long day. It's been a really long day. So I just also recognizing Ed Parsons has joined the meeting, but we can just jump right to it. So we appreciate everyone's thoughtful comments, and where we are today is really to determine the general location of the school. We've determined that it's for Fox Hill only, which is great. We've determined it's a 2-story school, which is another step in making our submission to MSBA. So today and tonight, what we're asking is for a vote of the general location of the school. I want to just first point out that this is really just the beginning of the design process. We have provided concepts and ideas and general locations. We've also talked about general traffic circulation, traffic patterns, number of parking spaces. But all of these are to be worked out during the schematic design process. So I don't want anyone to think that what we're putting in front of you tonight is the final design of the site and even the building. We're going to continue to refine the building as well as we enter into schematic design. So, and number of fields, the amount of fields, the type of fields, all of that will be worked out during schematic design. So tonight before you, just really quickly, this is the 2-story school floor plan layout. Nothing has changed. We received some great feedback last week. We met with public safety last Friday, and so we have some general input and feedback as relates to the overall floor plan and organization, and we'll continue to refine those during schematic design as well. But nothing has changed. If you enter the building, there's an arrow at the bottom, a red arrow at the bottom. That is the main entry of the school with the main administration in green. And they will be there to oversee staff, visitors, and students entering the building. We've organized it in such a way that the community use spaces, the cafetorium and the gymnasium, will be located in what we're considering a community wing, where the academic, which is the purple spaces, can be closed off so the community can use the spaces after hours. The community wing hasn't changed, right? It's 4 full-size classrooms for various uses per grade, and it's organized with 3 grades per floor. So I'm not going to spend much time, but just to remind everyone of the organization of the school. And the final organization will be tweaked and come to a final resting place, so to speak, during schematic design. So before us tonight are really just the general location of where we're going to put the new school. So if you want to go. So just, I don't know if you can zoom it. Maybe everyone can see it. You can see in red, the dotted red, which is right in the middle of the site. That's the existing building. And so while we have a large area to locate the new building, we do have to make sure that the function of the existing school can operate during construction. So our options truly are C, 3C, which is to the southeast of the existing building, or 3D, which is north of the existing building. The cost difference, the cost is slightly more with the building to the southeast of the existing building. It does not provide for the preferred orientation of north and south for the classroom, so that they can obtain great light, daylighting, and views without the glare. Well, there'll be glare, but we can control the glare better with a north-south orientation. The building will be 65 feet approximately from the vernal pool. It will, we can go through the construction phasing in a minute. And the reason primarily why it costs a little bit more is that we have about 7 inches of unsuitable soils that must be removed from within the building footprint, and that there will be some retaining walls required due to the sloping site going from north to south. And then 3D actually has the building to the north. We will put the building within a part of the existing parking lot, and we'll go through all of the phasing as it relates to this option. It does provide optimal north-south classroom orientation. It is further away from the vernal pool, and then we'll talk about how the phasing will work. There are unsuitable soils that also must be removed, but slightly less than if the building was located to the southeast, and that retaining walls would not be required in this option. Oh, we did, yeah. Yes, please. So this is just a zoomed in version, specifically everything that I just spoke of. The traffic circle, so I would also like to say that we did have a meeting with public safety personnel last week, and both options were well received. We talked about the traffic circle. They said as long as it's wide enough to support their vehicles, they're not opposed to it at all. I think what we just want to point out is that this is a concept, and that we will fully vet the traffic circle. We will make sure that we do studies to make sure that all the vehicles can go around the traffic circle, but also the bus drop-off area as well as the parent drop-off area. So all of those studies will occur once we have a location for the new school. The parent queue length is about 1,000 feet, which would support the number of cars that you currently have. And of course, it's with the school located to the north of the existing building, it requires less paving compared to the building to the south. And it is a relatively flat development area. Next slide. And next slide. I don't know why. Oh, I'm sorry. I think what we were showing, thank you. I didn't even realize. If you go back one more. One more, sorry. No. So what we're pointing out in this option was a response to the Conservation Commission's comments last week regarding the intrusion to the vernal pool. And so there are many ways to mitigate that if that does become or continues to be a concern with everyone. We have reached out to our environmental consultant to research a little further about vernal pools as well as a hydrology test to make sure that their rainwater harvesting won't impact the vernal pool. So we will be studying these further during schematic design. But this would just demonstrate that there are ways to protect the vernal pool as we've received feedback from Conservation Commission, which again, we would continue to study. And then also, what the final location and quantity and sizes of the fields would be for this option. But not trying to confuse everyone, so that's in response to the comments we received last week. But if we go to the next slide, this is what everyone had been seeing in the past. And again, we can refine and talk about the quantity, size, and where the fields go during schematic design. Next slide. So just walking everyone through the construction as well as the traffic patterns. We went through this last week. This option allows for separation of parents and buses, and then the roadway where the parents would be entering, which is the blue and the magenta. The magenta would be for the vans that we're able to provide a dedicated drop-off area, understanding those students require more time for loading and unloading. And the next slide. Oh, sorry. People don't normally say it. Now I'm off, if that's better. Thank you. And this slide, again, just demonstrates the pedestrian paths. And again, we will refine this with safe routes, with the public safety, once we understand what the final configuration is for the location of the school. And the next slide. Oh, there you are. Oh, it's slow. Okay. And then, as this relates to understanding that the school really will be a community asset for 50, 60, 75 years, it is important to make sure that the final location of it really will be the optimal location, but we also don't want to diminish the impact that it would have on the existing school in operation during construction. We anticipate that construction will be about 2 years. So we really wanted to think through, even at this point, what would be required for construction and construction phasing. So this will just show you some site impacts and considerations. There will be a few trees that would need to be removed in this with the building to the north, and that it will be about 85 feet from the existing school. We've talked about the unsuitable soils, and there is a relatively high water table near the traffic circle, but that would be for either location. And as I mentioned, it's a relatively flat development area. And then as we walk through the phasing diagrams,
Can I
the-
ask a question on that last slide?
Sure.
The playgrounds on there, the blue lines look like buffer zones, but are those areas currently wet? Like the playgrounds won't be flooding out?
During,
Once it's up and running, like these aren't areas where the playgrounds will constantly be dealing with water. Like there'll be mitigation put in place to keep
Yes.
it off those areas?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So if the building was to the north, we would provide clear separation of contractor and school use. The school is actually, would be located in the vicinity of the existing parking lot, so we would create a temporary parking lot, a temporary play area for the students, not necessarily reconstruct or move the play equipment, but we would create a play area for the students. And we also thought we could improve some of the current traffic where we could create a independent bus loop from the parent drop-off area. So that would be phase one. Phase two, we would then move all the students into the new school, and then the contractor would take control of the existing building for demolition and site work. And we would still use the temporary parking and loop for parent drop-off while the bus drop-off to the west of the new school would be complete at that time. And then the final phase would be we would finish up the new parking as well as put the temporary parking to fields or to green space. The school, if it was located to the southeast of the existing building, I've went through all of the considerations that are identified on this slide, so we can just go to the next one. Here, we do have two options, and again, we're not done studying whichever is the preferred location. We actually have a option that actually has the traffic circulation going down the south of the site. We felt this might be more advantageous, seeing that we have neighbors along Vincent Road. So we're just showing here that the traffic circle would be in the same location, that we would have parent drop-off in the queue that goes around the parking lot, very similar to the other option with dedicated drop-off for vans, and then there would be a separate bus drop-off loop, which is in yellow. We have a couple of, you'll see the red stars. Those are what we're calling control points, where we would expect to have staff help manage the crossings at certain points during arrival and dismissal. But again, all of this will be vetted out at the next phase. And then this would be the pedestrian access. And we're showing a path that goes from the traffic circle down to the school. Conversations will need to occur. Is that going to be maintained? Is that going to be shoveled? Is there going to be lights associated with that? So again, we're just starting all of these conversations. The next slide will just show you the impacts. So the new building would be pretty close to the existing building, somewhere around 15 feet. We haven't finished studying it. We'll do our best to make sure that the building is moved far enough, as far away as possible from the existing school while being respectful of the vernal pools. The one thing that we did hear at the public safety meeting, and it was great to confirm that both police and fire would require full access all the way around the building. So we just want to make sure that any paved areas are wide enough for the fire apparatus to go around the building. The only other thing to note here, as we pointed out before, is that the building would have lighting on it on the exterior for safety. So as it might relate to the vernal pool and being sensitive to it, there would be some light that would be resonating from the new building. So in this instance, we would create a temporary road that goes up to the north for contractor use, that we could separate the contractor, which is hatched in red, with the existing operations of the existing school. And then we would use a little bit of the existing parking for contractor access. And I guess I would just like to say, we would have to, sorry, just go back one more. We would have to refine this and make sure that it works for play areas, but we've identified the play area for the students, and that we actually created or decided to use the loop that goes around the current building as bus drop-off, and that parents would go through the parking lot. But again, all of this can be worked out at the next phase. Once the building's complete, again, the contractor would then take control of the existing building. They would demolish it, and we would have everyone go through the loop to the north. And the parents would have to go through the parking lot, but that would be a temporary situation. And then once that is complete, we would then finish the fields and the final parking for the school. And I think that's it. So maybe if you just go to the first slide that compared the two, and we can just open it up, Melissa.
Yeah, 13 there. Do you have any hands up online? Ed?
Hi, thank you. I have a question about the bus drop-off circulation loop there in 3D. That goes directly up the hill, and I'm wondering what you have planned to flatten that. I have trouble imagining the buses going up there in the wintertime with snow and ice on the road.
To the site impact slide. Ed, you were referring to the one to the north, correct?
That's correct.
Yep. Keep going. So Vivian, would you like to respond to that?
So we know that that's sloped in that area, and we would, actually, that's why we need to take out the trees so that we would regrade that area. We may need to take out just a hair more, because you're right, Ed, it does, that whole side of the site does need to be regraded. And where we can, we're gonna try not to have walls. At this point, we don't anticipate, because there's space to grade it out.
I can't see that. Okay, Ed, could you hear that?
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I can hear nothing but murmurs.
You're hard to
Vivian.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
A little better.
Okay, so we are removing enough trees, so the red hatch marks are where we're proposing tree removal. We may need to remove just a hair more, but that area would be regraded so that there would be no more than the 2% slope that's needed, because we also need to have kids be able to get off the buses and make that whole area accessible. So we could, when you push the dirt away, we can do a 2-to-1 slope, and that way, that means there's going to be a slope against the tree line, but we can grade the actual bus area out.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to question if the regrading was feasible. And similarly to the south, if we had fields that that abutted that grade to the south against the tree line. I think the answer is yes.
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 That whole area,
Yes, that's right.
the other option with the building to the, are you saying on this option, Ed? Will we be grading
Fields
this?
would be down there. Yeah.
Yeah, we would be grading. There is some high water table, so we would have all of the appropriate drainage layers, et cetera, under the field so they could be used more frequently or they would remain in better condition. So that whole area would be regraded.
Thank you.
No other hands.
All right.
While people are thinking. The only other thing is that as part of the conversation this evening, we have identified as well that both options, there is sufficient space for ground source heat pumps or geothermal. So if anyone was wondering what all those little red dots were, it was just letting you know that we could fit the well field if ground source heat pumps was the desired energy source.
Ms. Monaco?
I'm under the impression that most, at least from the last meeting, that most people are in favor of the north part of the site. I'm not, but I just want to make the points about why I think the southern spot might be better, just really to get them on the record. What? You want me closer to the mic? Okay, got it. All right, first of all, I just want to make the point that we did kind of agree on 2 stories last time, but we didn't vote, so that's still out there. And we did cover last time that SBA reimbursement for site work does cover fields?
Up to a certain limit. So
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, okay. All right, so my reasons for preferring the southern location, in addition to the conservation issues, are first, I think that it just looks better. I think it's a prettier look to have that big open space with the school in the back. It doesn't have the southern exposure, which southern exposure is awesome. It's wonderful. If I were building a new house, I would want the whole thing to have southern exposure. However, I'm not a fan of northern exposure, so it's kind of too bad that we have half our classrooms get the awesome south and half of them get the kind of not so bright back. But that's just me. Most people don't care about those things. The first slide tonight shows some vegetation being planted to protect the vernal pool, correct? And what that also does is it minimizes, or it reduces, I won't say minimize, it reduces the fields, the area for the fields. If we were to put the building in the southern spot, we would have, I believe, more space for fields, to Jason's point. So I know that this can all be worked on and changed relative to traffic, et cetera. But when I look at the two, I just get this awful feeling that we're going to have kids crossing where there are buses, and that every child that walks and every parent that walks, if we go with this first northern plan, and I know it can be changed, but the idea that in snow and ice and slippery stuff and sand and that all these little kids are going to walk across the bus circle really bothers me. Whereas on the southern site, they have that cross at Fox Hill Road, and they have a pathway that isn't near any vehicles. It's not near buses, it's not near cars. So to me, that's a safety issue. I'm also a little concerned about the circle in general. On the southern plan, there are only 3 turns off that circle, which is good. I mean, it's kind of what's there now. There's a Westwood, Fox Hill, and a turn into the school site. The northern site has 5 spokes on the rotary. And as someone said to me, 5 entrance exits on a rotary, what could possibly go wrong? I just see that as a kind of a mess, frankly. And I know you can change it, and I'm counting on it. So that's pretty much it. Those are my areas of concern, things I wanted to definitely say before any vote was taken. And it's just how I see it.
Oh, Jeremy, sorry.
Yeah, so again, speaking to some of the aspects of the building layout, for 3C, we're going at an increased cost of $3 million. To Mr. Boyvan's points last week, and as stated by Donna, I think we increased the light to the vernal pool, which is more detrimental. And then, I have concerns about accessibility for that footpath coming down in the winter. It's not going to be reliably plowed, shoveled. It's a really long stretch, so if you get a really bad snowstorm, can we confirm that it would be reliably plowed and shoveled out when the roadway will take priority? And I think it creates an accessibility issue. And then, the multiple roadways, walkways, I think maybe would decrease our field space. But again, just my points that I'd like to bring up. Thank you.
David.
So in talking with different members of our community, I'm going to go ahead and move that we choose site option 3D as our preferred site location.
Thank you.
Second.
Do you have further commentary here? You don't have to. Okay.
That both options are, definitely have their strengths and pros and cons. But I just think in the meetings that we have had with the NISCO, in talking with teachers and talking with families, that for our community, that this would be the best bet.
Thank you.
Do we need 2 votes, or there's 4 options?
If we could include or amend the language in the vote to include the 2-story option to make sure that's captured in the process.
All right. Do you want to just amend that's the 2-story, just caveat that it's the 2-story on the northern site, 3D?
Yes.
Okay.
If it needs a second, I'll second
Okay.
the amendment.
All right.
Whatever. All right.
We're all set in here. All right. Mrs. Bond.
Flipping a coin still.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco.
No.
Ms. Simon.
Aye.
Mr. Brooks.
Aye.
Dr. Conti.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
First, or
Yeah.
I'm hearing myself.
It's weird.
Donna, when we spoke with the safety folks, did they express a preference? I'm just trying to remember.
They were pretty neutral. They said that they could work with both. Their priorities were They didn't have concern with the traffic circle, but of course, they understood it's preliminary, so they wanted to make sure their vehicles could enter the site, and they just wanted to make sure they had access around the building.
So there wasn't a strong preference? Okay. Aye, yes.
Mr. Cuna,
Yes.
Mr. Sagarino,
Yes.
Mr. Denizio,
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Mr. Volano,
Yes.
Mrs. Priest,
Aye.
and I vote yes. So it's 11-1-0. Where are we getting this echo? Oh, Mr. Lyons? Oh, I'm sorry. I did not know you joined. Mr. Lyons, would you like to vote on this motion?
Yes.
Yes, you would like to vote, and yes is your vote? Sorry, I just want to make sure. Okay. So we are 12-1-0. All right. Oh, Margot's here. Sorry.
You're good.
I'm still on the call, so, but I also vote yes, so.
Okay. So we are 13-1-0. Nicole didn't join, did she? Okay. All right. Thank you. Oh, another topic. CM. Oh. CM versus design. Oh. Oh. Yes, CM versus design bid build. But I mean, I can go out of order if this presentation's different.
So the next item we have on the agenda is to continue the discussion and hopefully entertain a motion and vote for the preferred construction delivery method. I know we've talked previously about the pros, cons, differences between the two. We're happy to answer any additional comments or questions on the matter. Given both site locations and where we're at with the options that are left on the table at this time, the consultant team, Danisco and Doran Whittier, have met several times and discussed it. And in the options that are left on the table, there's not really a clear advantage to going CM at risk. And I think we've expressed that in the past. So as far as your consultant team, we're very much on the same page that going design bid build or chapter 149 would be very much appropriate for either option. But certainly for the preferred option as previously voted tonight. So again, we're here to entertain any questions, comments, concerns about that, but as much as we can make a recommendation between the two, just purely between the options that are left on the table, the merits that sometimes come with the construction manager at risk are really not clear and present at this time with the option on the table. So that's how we feel about it, and happy to answer any questions.
Steve, I do have one question. I spoke with a good friend of mine over the weekend who did extensive work on Somerville High School, and he told me he felt very strong that CM at Risk built a better product. Again, I defer to your expertise, but I just was curious what you felt about that comment. He felt very strongly. He was like, I would always recommend CM at Risk, and I said, it's $6 million. Is it worth it? And he was like, well, $6 million worth it for a better product. I don't know if it is, and I don't know how you define a better product, but I don't know if you have comments for that.
From what I know about the Somerville High School project, it contained a very large component of a renovation. And with that sheer number of students on site, maintaining school operations in a very urban environment in comparison to Fox Hill, I would agree 100% that CM at Risk made all the sense in the world at Somerville High School. This is a very different site, a very different school population, and a very different, and of course, a different type of building. And so there is, just from a sheer proximity to the existing building, a little bit more room to operate and lay down space from the contractor's perspective. Excuse me. And the other difference there is that in a renovation, as much as you can detail and design what the new aspects of the renovated portion of the building will be, there's always a certain level of unknown of what's behind the walls that you literally can't expose or open up to uncover all those unknowns. And again, in CM at risk, it's a much preferable delivery method to handle that sort of risk. Whereas Fox Hill is very clearly in its separate tucked away portion of this site, in the area in which to operate in. Design bid build, a very clear set of instructions on its own, is one of the reasons why we gave it a lot of thought and can make that recommendation.
Thank you. Ms. Simon?
I did a little bit of my own research because I didn't know what these were and I wanted to know. And like every other decision about buying insurance, is it worth spending all this money for insurance or not? And if it's your dental insurance, it's a certain amount of money. And if it's a building, it's a different. And to me, a CM at risk is sort of an insurance policy for things that we can't expect. And I wasn't really sure, but last week and this week, we hired you folks to represent us, and you haven't made a lot of recommendations to us, but it seems that you've really looked at the options, and I support going with the design build on this, because I feel like you've looked at the options, and as Mike Burton said last week, this doesn't appear to be a situation where having that additional insurance policy is worth $5 or $6 million. And so I'm in favor of going with the design build and following your recommendation.
Yeah, it's, well, maybe you could see it as an insurance policy. It's more about, your appetite for risk and how you can handle different types of risk. When asked, I often make the comparison between the two is, in a design bid build, if you can make a very clear set of instructions to hand to somebody from which to build the project from, design bid build makes a lot of sense. If in a renovation or renovation addition where it's a little less or a little more difficult to accurately define those set of instructions a year or more out prior to construction, the CM helps you manage that risk a little bit. Just in terms of flexibility in the middle of construction when the walls are open and the hole is open, to maintain schedule and deal with that risk. So.
I just want to make sure I'm hearing you right. So basically, if we go design bid build, you anticipate less change requests, less engineering changes and all that because we're building a building from scratch, so we wouldn't have to entertain that as we would if we were renovating the building. So basically, that's where the savings comes in because we're not going to have those kinds of change requests through the build process, correct? Or we don't anticipate as many as if we were renovating, let me rephrase.
Yeah, I guess that's a better way to phrase it.
Dr. Conti?
Just to respond, though, your first comment, or the way it was phrased the first time, a change order is a change order. So if the drawings omitted something on the drawings, you would get a change order whether it was a CM or a general contractor, right? So in that case, it doesn't matter. They're both going to be asking for additional costs, and that's what contingency is for. But yeah, having a CM on board early during a phased occupied project really benefits us because they help us determine the phases, they help us determine how to move students around, help us determine what part of the building and what the risk level is and how much extra money maybe to carry because of all the unknowns. But, when you look at a new school, you will have the site totally separated, right? A GC or a CM, it's not going to matter, right? And we tested ourselves and we said, what is the benefit? And there's not even a schedule benefit at this point, just the way the phasing is working out.
And my question was more pointed towards major redesign proposals, not necessarily small change orders, things we had to fix or omitted.
Dr. Conti?
Part of it for me, again, we have a history. I mentioned this. Memorial School was design bid build. Across the street Marshall Simons was a renovation with kids in place, and we were very comfortable with OPM, the designer and the builder as well. So I think part of this is going to be having you all vet the builder and sort of that selection process for us. So I think we were comfortable with CM at risk, at least from what I remember, because the builder had just completed a project or was just completing a project for us. So we were comfortable that they knew what they were doing. And so isn't one of the risks with design, bid, build is the bidding process itself, or you guys will help us through that, right?
Yeah, the procurement to get them on the team is a little bit different, but even with design, bid, build, there is pre-qualification of not just the subcontract, public subcontractors, but the general contractor themselves. So it is a two-step process to solicit their qualifications that they submit. So we can pre-qualify them so that anybody submitting that the project, whether it's a bonding capacity, too big, or historically they're not bidding on projects of this size, and that their previous projects have a good track record, all come into consideration when pre-qualifying. So maybe sometime around as early as spring, summer, we can talk about when it makes the most sense to start that process, but we would help put together a pre-qualification package to solicit qualifications from general contractors from which to pre-qualify. So in other words, if they're qualified and they have the capacity and a good track record, we would pre-qualify them. So when the bidding is open, only those contractors that were pre-qualified are eligible. So it's not an open public bid to anybody and everybody at that time.
But we still don't get to choose, right? Just to clarify, it's the lowest bid.
It's the lowest eligible and responsible bidder. So if they're eligible from a standpoint that they've been pre-qualified and their bid is accurate and fair, then
Okay. And we can qualify on, you said experience, quality, et cetera?
So if they've been pre-qualified and their bid is bona fide and doesn't contain any errors, then you're more or less required to take the low bidder.
But yes. So as part of the pre-qualification process, we would make sure that they had educational experience, that they've worked on occupied sites, that like we can determine what the qualifications are to pre-qualify them. And just to add, in addition to the lowest responsible bidder, they're also required at the time of bidding. So we will pre-qualify contractors in advance, right? It could be 6 months prior to going out to bid, but they're also required to provide a update statement, a state update statement at the time of their bids, so that if anything has changed, then that gives us an opportunity for another look to make sure that nothing has significantly changed within their organization, which would disqualify them.
And is this another where they also have to be MSBA approved too? No? Okay.
They're DCAM certified. So
Okay.
they have a current file on record with the state through DCAM
Okay.
of their history that they've been certified to perform this classification of work.
Okay.
And as Donna mentioned, because that certification period is annual, the time between when their record is reviewed with the state and when your project goes to bid, they provide an update statement, all the project they've worked on in between then with references, so we can get the most up-to-date, we can check their most up-to-date references between that annual review period.
And DCAM is Division of Capital Asset Management, for those that don't like acronyms.
Did you have another comment?
No, you asked
Oh.
my question, so that was.
Oh, okay.
Do you need a motion? Is that what, Madam Chair?
Yep. Yes, please.
I move that we move forward with the design bid build option for bidding the project.
I'll second that.
Any other, don't see any hands online, just checking. No. All right, Mrs. Bond.
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco.
Yes.
Ms. Simon.
Yes.
Mr. Brooks.
Aye.
Dr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Cuna,
Yes.
Mr. Sagarino,
Yes.
Mr. Denizio,
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Mr. Volano,
Yes.
Mrs. Priest,
Aye.
Mrs. Bunker,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons, Mr. Lyons. Oh, okay. Couldn't find mute fast enough. All right, I'm a yes. 1400. HVAC system. Oh, sure. I don't have a budget line item on the agenda, but whenever you want to.
Yeah, I think this was just to recap the cost differential between the two options. If you want to just go, it's fine. Thank you. This is what we shared last week. This hasn't changed. I think the only update would be that we received the taxpayer information, if you want to interject that now or afterwards.
We can discuss that if there's a representative from Ways and Means that might want to introduce that topic, some work that's been done. I believe there's a meeting this morning and
Yep. We had a meeting with the town finance team and the Ways and Means Subcommittee, Town Hall 1, to talk about, just to sort of validate the estimates and the criteria we'd used previously in producing
Roger,
estimates.
can you
Okay.
you can pull the mic towards you. Yeah, there you go.
Well, I can get closer
There
to
you
it
go.
too.
Yes, please.
So pretty much we took the same numbers that were offered last week in terms of the project costs and the four options, and just mapped that through the residential expected residential tax rates, and the result came up pretty much in the same ballpark for the numbers that we talked about before. It's around $200 average residential tax rate per year, but it's still an estimate. There's plenty of other conditions that go into it, but in terms of long-term bonding rates, et cetera. But the estimates are in the same ballpark we talked about before, and so there's nothing real news here. It's just we validated the previous numbers that we put together.
Thank you. Can you clarify the average tax bill is a $650,000 house, roughly?
I think that's about the median, yeah.
Okay.
650.
So $650,000 assessed value home will pay roughly $200 a year for 25 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions in here? Any hands online?
So I think the last item we wanted to talk about was the opportunity to introduce ground source heat pumps, which you'll see always GSHP, or also known as geothermal. A lot of people refer to them as geothermal. So we gave an update last time on the sustainability working group meeting, and we're just wanting to share with you just again that we believe that with the new code requirements, the interests in the community to achieve a very high performing building, that we're able to do that. If you go to the next slide. That what we did though is we did look at, as we mentioned, various options both for the plant itself, the component that produces the energy, as well as the distribution, which is the equipment that brings the heat and cooling throughout the building. So we looked at everything from gas boilers with a variable air volume equipment or distribution. We looked at an all-electric VRF system, variable refrigerant flow. It just doesn't sound right. It never sounds right. We looked at an all-electric air source heat pump system utilizing a fan coil unit. And then we looked at multiple options for ground source heat pumps, anywhere from active chill beams, fan coil units, a displacement system, and then even incorporating the VRF as a distribution component utilizing the ground for the energy. So with that, when we did the energy models and the life cycle cost analysis, I keep pointing and I know it's done. I know it's done. We took into consideration the schedule that was provided to us, recognizing you'll see there's a lot of anticipated use for the building, and we feel very confident that the projected use would probably come to fruition, and we have even in some instances opportunities to even exceed that should the building even be more popular than we anticipate it to be. We also, not at this point does it necessarily matter, but we also looked at, does the placement of the building or the orientation of the building really matter when you're talking about an energy use? And it's 1 to 2% higher with the east-west orientation, again, because you don't benefit from the solar as much as you would from the north-south, but we'll just keep going. So what we were able to, and this is a life cycle cost analysis, and I believe we spent a little bit of time on this last week. Our goal tonight is to hopefully obtain a vote to support ground source heat pumps. That was a result of the sustainability working group, which occurred the day after we met last week. Was that only a week ago? Wow. So after going through the life cycle cost analysis that we shared with you last week with the sustainability working group, everyone felt that it would really be beneficial to the project and to the community if we go with a ground source heat pump system or plant to deliver the energy into the building. What you'll see is that from an energy use perspective, it generates the least amount of energy. You'll also see that you receive the most incentives through Mass Save and also through the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits. So recognizing the annual energy is pretty consistent through all of the options. And then if you look at the amount of replacement, a VRF system requires more replacement than an air source heat pump system compared to a ground source heat pump system. And when you walk through all of the replacements that would be required over a 50-year lifespan, you would see that it actually costs less utilizing any of the ground source heat pump options over air source, a VRF, and then, of course, a gas boiler. And so we're here to answer any questions. I think for tonight, we're not necessarily looking to select the distribution system, which would be what actually gets the heat or the cooling into the individual spaces. But if we obtain a vote for the ground source heat pump, that would really set us up in a way that we can do a test well at the next phase, which is really important, so we can, A, validate that your site, we don't see why, but validate that the site will be a good candidate for ground source heat pumps. And then that would also tell us the amount of wells that we would need to support the size of the school and the use of the school.
So we're just looking to vote today on the GSHP, one of these four.
Just the
pick
ground
one,
source.
Just pick one.
Really, it's the ground
Okay.
source heat pump.
Okay.
So the plus is the active chill beam, fan coil unit, displacement, and then
That's how
a
it gets out
VRF.
into the
That's,
building.
yeah,
Okay.
right. So the ground source, instead of gas coming in, right, you have a boiler.
Yep.
Instead of gas, it would be utilizing the ground to deliver the energy into the building.
Do you need a motion for this?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to move that we agree to go with a ground source heat pump plant with the distribution to be decided in the future. And I also want to just mention that in addition to having the net cost being lower for all four of those options, it's also the least amount of energy usage for all four of those options. So I'm pleased to make that motion.
Thanks, Martha.
I was just looking for clarification on the prices that we've been given currently are based off of what heating system, and I see the additional costs. I know there's incentives that will offset, but just trying to wrap my head around the numbers that are on the screen in front of us.
Yep, thank you. If you could go back to one of the cost slides.
Madam Chair, we can have a discussion.
Yeah.
Should we just second the motion?
Second.
So I'll second the motion
Okay.
for discussion purposes, and then
Thank
we
you.
can do
Thank
it.
you.
That's
It's okay.
okay?
Yep, this is perfect, thank you. Yep, so the base number, you'll see where it says total construction with base VAV and gas boilers. And then we added the ground source heat pump with the fan coil units. And then you'll come to a total construction cost, and let's just go to 3D DBB or design bid bill for $76.9 million. And then you would see the incentive credit that would come back to you. So the construction cost would be 71.
And then the numbers that Ways and Means ran were off of the adjusted
Yep,
cost
if you
total.
go to the next slide. This is the numbers that they use. They use the 97, but then you took the credits, right? The credits and rebates. So that was based on the 91.7.
All right, thank you for clarifying that.
Any hands online? Nope. All right. Anyone else in the room? Okay. Mrs. Bond.
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco.
Yes.
Ms. Simon.
Yes.
Mr. Brooks.
Aye.
Dr. Conti.
Yes?
Mr. Cuna.
Yes.
Mr. Sagarino.
Yes.
Mr. Denizio.
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt.
Yes.
Mr. Volano.
Yes.
Mrs. Priest.
Yes.
Mrs. Bunker.
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Okay. Another 14. I'm yes. 1400. And that is a new. I don't have any other topics. Do we have anyone else for public comment again? All right. Next meetings. We have a community meeting reminder. It is December 5th at 7 p.m. Right here. We have our usual executive working groups. And then, December 18th, Catherine, triple checking. You will chair that one. December 18th.
Yes.
Okay. All set? Anyone?
I'd like to move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.